Every U.S. president since 1947 gets a briefing on his very first day in office. Not about the economy, not about nuclear weapons. The very first briefing is about one organization. And every single president, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter, like, walks out of that room like visibly shaken. What did they get told? Nobody outside that room knows. That's exactly the problem. The CIA has started wars, ended democracies, experimented on its own citizens, built terrorist networks, and then spent trillions fighting those same networks 20 years later. And here's what should genuinely disturb you. Everything I just said is documented, confirmed, in declassified government files. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is history. Your textbook simply skipped. Iran. A man named Mohammad Mossadegh wins a democratic election and then does something unforgivable. He looks at his country sitting on one of the largest oil reserves on the planet and says, "This oil belongs to the Iranian people, not to British corporations, not to America." He had exactly 87 days before the CIA destroys him. They flood Tehran with cash, bribe military generals, judges, newspaper editors, hire gangs to stage violent protests, manufacture chaos, make it look like the country is falling apart. When the streets are burning, the military moves in. Mossadegh is dragged out of his home in his pajamas. A pro-American dictator goes back on the throne. The oil goes back to the corporations. Total cost? Approximately $1 million. No war, no soldiers, $1 million, and a democracy disappears in 87 days. Now here's what nobody told you. That $1 million operation eventually cost America trillions, because the dictator they installed was so brutal, so hated, that when the revolution came in 1979, it didn't bring in a moderate government. It brought in radical fundamentalism. It brought in 444 days of American hostages. It created the hostile Iran that exists today. The CIA's greatest victory became America's greatest nightmare, and it took exactly 26 years to detonate. But nobody stopped, because by the time the consequences arrived, the people who made the original decision were long gone. While the CIA was overthrowing governments abroad, they were running experiments at home, on their own people, without their knowledge, without their consent. The program was called MK Ultra. Starting in the early 1950s, the CIA began secretly dosing American and Canadian civilians with LSD. Not soldiers, not volunteers, civilians, mental patients, prison inmates. They wanted to know if they could chemically break a human mind and rebuild it. They tested electroshock therapy, sensory deprivation, psychological torture so extreme that some subjects never recovered. When MK Ultra was finally exposed in the 1970s, the CIA director ordered every single file destroyed. Most were, but a batch of 20,000 documents had been misfiled in a separate records room and survived by pure accident. That is the only reason you know MK Ultra existed. An entire program of human experimentation was one filing mistake away from disappearing from history forever. Now the operation that might be the most catastrophic own goal in history. Soviet Union invades Afghanistan. The CIA starts funding, arming, and training Afghan fighters to bleed the Soviets dry. Over the next decade, billions of dollars, Stinger missiles, training camps. They even recruit a young Saudi man from a wealthy family to help coordinate the effort. His name was Osama bin Laden. The Soviets withdraw, America celebrates, CIA directors get medals, then the cameras turn off, the funding stops, America moves on. And in those abandoned CIA-built camps, with those CIA-supplied weapons, a new organization forms. They call themselves Al-Qaeda. On September 11th, 2001, you know the rest. America then spends 20 years and over $2 trillion fighting what it created. $2 trillion. To fight a decision that was celebrated with medals 20 years earlier. You control the beginning. You never control the ending. Nobody in power ever wants to admit that. Here is what I want you to sit with. Every single thing I just told you, we only know because of accidents. Documents that were supposed to be shredded, but weren't. Whistleblowers who risked their lives. A filing clerk in 1953 who put one folder in the wrong drawer. That is our entire window into what this organization actually does. The CIA's current budget, classified. Number of employees, classified. Countries where they are operating right now, today, as you watch this, classified. We are seeing maybe 5% of the actual picture. And here's the part I keep coming back to. The CIA is not run by monsters. It's staffed by people who genuinely believe they are protecting their country. People who decide that democracy, law, and human rights are luxuries that only work in peacetime, that the ends justify the means. And that belief that the rules apply to everyone, except the people protecting the rules, that is the most dangerous idea in the history of organized power. The people who built those Taliban training camps weren't stupid. They weren't evil. They were sitting in a room making what felt like the obvious, necessary, rational decision. 20 years later, 3,000 people died on a Tuesday morning because of it. The question is not whether the CIA has done terrible things. That's in the files. The real question is, what is being decided right now in a classified room somewhere that we will spend the next 20 years paying for? We won't know until it's too late. We never do.